So for, I guess, the rest of this video, I'm going to turn the flash on so I can actually see. I hate these short days with this daylight savings and all that stuff. So basically, you want to get your T20 Torx and extension. So this is your heating element here, and if I had thought about it, or I should have bought a new one and put it in here. But to the best of my knowledge, this heating element still works. It's just my wire doesn't look too healthy here. I think it's like 60 or 80 bucks for this heating element. So, and it's really, to heat the fuel going into it in the wintertime. So most of the year, it's not a big deal. In the wintertime when it's really, really cold, it's important to have. So anyway, I'm going to take this apart and I'm going to come back to it. Taking my heating element out. You can see my wires are like a little ugly. Probably plan to replace this here. So this is what's left. This fuel tower. So there you see one O-ring there, and then there's one inside of it. So I gotta use a pencil or something and push this apart, and put a new O-ring down there and a new O-ring on the inside. I'll show it here in a second. You can see the O-ring on there. So the O-ring has to be replaced there. And then we have this O-ring here. Replace that. And then we'll assemble it back in. We'll put that inside. I'll show the assembly here. I'm just going to change the O-rings and then assemble it to put it back together. Here I've removed the O-rings. The O-rings, I cut them with a knife, just easier to lift them and cut them. So and that's the new O-ring installed there. New O-ring installed here. Inside what in here, basically, there's a little spot. In there you can see where the rod goes in. It goes in there, on like that, on here. The new O-rings on it. This is what it looks like inside of here. There's actually a spot where that rod goes into, and this is how it assembles back. So we're just going to slide that. We'll try to keep it together, but slide it down in there. So there's really not much to it. Let's see if we can just keeping it together. You just want to it's all back together. So I got the spring in it. I'm just going to hold my finger. Make sure the spring stays where it belongs. Slip my heating element down. Now I'm going to need two hands here, so I'm going to pause my video to put the screws in. I got to push down on this, put my screws in, tighten them up, plug in my heating element wire. Okay, so 22 inch-pounds, tighten the Torx up, and plug your wire back in for the heating element. So, two new O-rings in the tower, the check valve tower. 3 O-rings, the 2 fluorosilicone, and the one that holds the shaft in the assembly. The heating, there's 2 in here for the connection for the heating and the temperature, One here, and in the pressure regulator in there. So that's the whole kit. That's the complete rebuild for this, for replacing all the O-rings. So basically, what it would cost to replace, like I said, this valve here is what was leaking from down underneath here. You know, those O-rings, it was leaking out of here and puddling on the bottom of my in my engine valley. So it was leaking out of here, and it was the O-rings were bad. So this doesn't go bad, it's the O-rings that go bad. So I mean, to spend anywhere between 30 and 50 bucks aftermarket to replace this valve, take it off and just put new O-rings in it. Like I said, the O-rings are $6, but here, you know, if the O-ring went bad here, then almost guaranteed that all the rest of these O-rings in this thing are the same age, and they're going to eventually go bad too. And so for $30 plus shipping, I got the O-ring kit. It's a complete, what does it say? It's called the Complete Fuel Bowl Seal Kit for '99 to 2003 on the 7.3 liter engines. And I paid a little bit extra to get the fluorosilicone drain valve O-rings. Those fluorosilicone are like in military grade, you know, lasts for a hell of a long time, forever basically. And the rest of these O-rings are a higher quality O-rings than the standard O-rings that Ford originally put in them. So, you know, so this is done. Now I gotta, you know, the last of the O-rings that are left are these ones, which they're the ones that seal the lines going in here. So now I bought these two extra. I paid $5 for these two extra ones, which I'm probably not going to put on at this time. I'm just putting on the main ones that are for the lines going into this. The reason is these go into the head, and I don't feel like getting into that. You know, I've been messing around with this long enough today, so I'm going to put this thing back in the vehicle and get the new fuel filter in it, which I have a new fuel filter here in the box to go in. So, you know, my day is winding down. I want to get this done and put it back in so I can get it running. Now, you can see these O-rings, they're coming out, you know, in pieces. Basically, the thicker, fatter, the new O-rings, they're just a thick O-ring. So basically, you know, you can't reuse any of these things. You know, you can see here, this is what's left of the O-ring. It's coming apart. I mean, literally, it's like just a piece. So you got to make sure you get all 100% of that out of there. You know, it should come out intact. You know, try not to get anything in these lines. You know, I wiped them clean. You want to get those O-rings, everything out. You don't want to get anything in those lines. You want the lines to stay clean, and then you know, get these completely off. You know, this one, those two over there. Get the O-rings completely off. Try not to get anything in the lines, because if you get anything in these lines and it gets sucked into the injector, you know, it'll be done. You'll ruin an injector. So, you know. Now, real quick before I put this back together, you have, what's that here? You got that one line going to the front part of the head. That line right there. Kind of bad place to my finger. So, that line going to the head there. And then you have where the leak was happening for me was the back, and it was dripping right down in here. You know, that's what all that extra crap is down there. But you see this line here going towards the back. If that develops a leak in there anywhere, it'll drip off the back. It runs down. You can see it run towards the back. It'll if you get a leak anywhere in here, in this line, or in the back, it'll leak down by your starter. So just to give you a heads up, if you've got fuel collecting here in the valley, it's usually from 9 times out of 10, it's this water valve that leaks. The O-rings go bad. Unless one of these lines, you know, chafes through or something, you know, or rust or whatever, it'll leak somewhere else. But if you got it right here in the valley and nowhere else, that's where your diesel fuel's at, dripping, it's from the valve. But if you've got it at the back or coming down, if it's coming down from the front, it's one of the lines, not the bowl. So that's all I want to tell you. All right, so there's 3 sizes here. There's 2 smaller ones that go on the on those lines. There's 2 smaller ones, and then the next size up goes on the top line on the driver's side, and the bottom line on the driver's side. So basically, here's the top line. That's it. Alright, that's basically where you want the line, the rubber to be at. So that way this will come right over top of it and compress it. So now I'm going to do the bottom one. You know, the brand new O-rings are pretty flexible. They'll slip right over. So, same thing here. It slides right over, so I can compress it. So that's it. We've got all our new O-rings in place, and we just gotta set it back in and get the lines hooked up. You know, we're almost done here. So just setting this down in. Now you can see the 2 bolts sticking out there where these go in. So, you know, I just got to push the bolts back and just get everything lined up and slip it in. So being I don't have an assistant again, I'm gonna shut the camera off and get this back in place and hook the lines up, and you know, we'll go from there. All right, so getting these lines hooked up, I've got pretty big hands, so you know, there's enough room to maneuver my hands around in this tight little space, even to get them down in there. You can actually work your way around. So, I mean, you really don't have to tear all this. Yeah, it's nice. It gives you a little extra room. But, I mean, this all doesn't have to all come out to get these lines hooked back up. I can get my other hand right in through here. I'll put a glove on to do it. But I can go right in through the front to put the front one on. And then, like, I'd reach with a wrench to tighten them up. So, you just have to be creative in which way you reach your hand to reach these to tighten them up. That's all. You know, I didn't really have to disconnect that much to get this stuff back in here and on. So get them in there finger tight, and then get the wrench and we'll tighten them down. All right, so I got my line hooked back up here to my valve. Get my plug back in. Come on. Plugs plug back in where it clicks. So now we just got to tighten these fittings. You want to get this line to go all the way down until it crushes basically. You wanted to just bottom out on, you don't want any gap. I'll show a little better on the top one over here. So what I was saying here, when you're tightening these up, and this one here, you want the threads clean, you want it in nice shape, because if you crank too hard on this housing for this regulator can split and break, and then you're screwed. So be careful when you're tightening this up that this nut doesn't bind or anything anywhere. You want it to crank easily on and off on those threads. So the last thing you want to do is break this housing. The rest of it, the brass fittings, can be replaced easily. They're much harder to break, but this one here, because the regulator's in there, you'll snap this off real quick. So so basically what I was explaining is when you're tightening these lines up, you want them to just go down and bottom on the housing. You can see it's pretty close. I'm not putting a whole lot of force on tightening this. That's it. So you can see there's virtually no gap in there. It's probably just about touching, but you don't want to overly crank this sucker, because you break that, you're screwed. So one last, we'll tighten this one here, and everything's back installed, and put the filter in and be done. All right, so I put a real light coat of WD-40 on my O-ring here and O-ring there. So everything is done. All my lines are hooked up. They're all tight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Line on the back, plug. My bolts, they're tight. All right, so we got it on here. Notice I'm full ratchet. It only has to be snug. It's hand tight down, and that's it. I mean, there really is not much to it to get it tight. All right, so everything's all done. Now I'm going to just prime the filter before I start the truck. So all I'm going to do is turn the key on. Three times. All right, so that's it. Filter should be good. Now I'm going to go out and check for leaks. Now, without sticking your arm in the fan belt, be very mindful of the fan belt. You want to just check, make sure there's no leaks anywhere. So, that's it. I'll put my cover on and call it a day. Like I always say in pretty much every video I do, that you should try and take your time when you do these jobs. You know, there's no point in hurrying. You know, just plan, do your job, get it done, take your time, and it'll be a lot better in the long run, because you know you'll do it. You'll do a good job yourself. You know, taking your time. It always pays to take your time. So instead of just replacing the valve, we save money by just buying the O-ring kit and rebuilding the entire thing. You know, the entire fuel filter bowl assembly. Basically, replacing every O-ring that you could replace on it. So, you know, for literally like 30 bucks, it was like $28 in O-rings for every single one, plus shipping, which I think it came out to like $37. So for just the cost to replace that valve, just to buy that valve aftermarket, I was able to replace every O-ring and repair the valve. You know, it's just time consuming, you know, and like I said, take your time, plan, you know, to spend a couple hours, to take your time, take it apart, clean it, put all the new pieces in, not lose any parts, put it back together, and be back up and running, not leaking fuel anymore, knowing that you've replaced every single part that can leak in your fuel bowl assembly. So that being said, the job's done, the vehicle's running, and you know, that's it. So I'm hoping this video helped you out, and you know, give me a like, share, subscribe, because you never know what I'm going to do next.